My mom owned a truck diner, and when I was little, I helped out by waiting tables. All the drivers that would come through would always call me a little lady, and it made me feel like I was being responsible, and Mom seemed to appreciate it. There was this one driver, though, that really bothered me. I was only 10 or 11 at the time, but even at that age, this guy gave me a predator vibe. My mom had always taught me to be careful with strangers and not overly friendly, and I think I usually followed that advice. But thinking about this driver, I'm honestly not sure I was too friendly, or what exactly made him decide to be obsessed with me. Anytime he came in, he would always get really chatty with my mom and with me, asking about our life, my pets, my favorite toys, anything really. I thought at first he was just really a big talker, lonely. A lot of truckers were, even at that age, and I knew it had to be hard constantly traveling. When he left, though, Mom warned me that I shouldn't talk to him much if he ever came back in. Something about him was off, and even she could sense that. He did come by often to our diner, at least 2 or 3 times a month. I remember he said that he worked long hauls in the area, and this was the only place that served good pumpkin pie. "Your mama's an amazing cook. Shame your daddy left her, huh?" he told me one day. I don't really know if I responded, but I distinctly remember him asking, "Don't you sometimes wish you had a new daddy?" It freaked me out, and I went to hide in the kitchen until he left. I didn't tell Mom. Honestly, don't know why. She did ask me, but I just said I was sick. Next time he came in, Mom actually had to take care of business, and I was alone for like maybe an hour. I really was actually surprised when I saw him, but I couldn't just ignore a customer. So I offered him a tray, and I remember that he apologized for before. I blamed myself for second-guessing because I accepted it, and then he asked me where my mom was. Without thinking, I told him she wasn't there. "She left you here alone?" he asked in surprise. You know how sometimes people say things and they sound like pleasant about them? That's how this guy sounded. He was happy to hear my mom wasn't there. He asked when she was coming back. I told him I didn't know, and then he said something out of the blue. "Do you like dogs?" I was 10. Of course I did. "I have a puppy on my truck. Want to go see?" I thank my lucky stars my mom taught me not to be so gullible. I was uneased by the offer and told him that I couldn't leave the diner unattended, especially since Mom wasn't there. I even suggested he could show me the dog next time. "Oh, it's for my little girl. She's about your age. Next time I come through, she won't be with me. Come on, it'll only take a second." I regret that I didn't say no. I think honestly I was scared he would do something if I did say no. He insisted that his truck was right outside, and I followed, but I really did feel scared out of my mind. I saw his big truck and stopped about 10 feet away. "You gotta get up in the cab," he told me, and I shook my head no. "Ah, come on. I have a toy in there too. You said you like Barbies, right?" I was surprised that he remembered, and then he really surprised me when I saw he wasn't lying. He reached into his truck and took out this brand new in-the-box Barbie doll, and I saw the dog too. It was a small boxer, wagging its tail. For a split second, I let my guard down and took a few more steps toward him. Somehow, before I reached his truck, my mom appeared out of nowhere. I don't know if she had telepathy or what, but she chewed the driver out and dragged me back inside. "What were you thinking?" she screamed at me later. After that incident, she refused to let him inside the diner. Honestly, I think that made things worse. He would start sending gifts to the diner, addressed to me. And I don't mean ordinary things. I'm talking about like clothes, fancy dresses. My mom was at her wit's end for about a month. When the stuff came in, she would toss it in the trash. She tried to call her sister to come watch me during the day, but the diner was pretty off the road and my aunt always claimed she was too busy. "Put her back in public school," Tammy said. But Mom said the schools were too far away and she liked me close, especially now that I had a stalker. I think someone later contacted a state trooper about the trucker, gave the officer a description and let them take all of the gifts that she had chosen not to throw away. Maybe get some fingerprints or something, I don't know. I don't really know if they ever found anything because about 2 months after that, Mom decided to move out of town. I asked her about it a few years back. Some memory had clicked it back into my brain and she got very quiet. "That man was going to take you. I think he probably would have killed you had I not been there that day," she said with a shudder. She told me that the cops had never found out who it was, despite all the things that he had sent me. And creepiest of all, she told me that he had sent me love letters. She had held on to one of them, thinking maybe one day she would contact the FBI or something, but after we moved, I guess the stalker had decided to move on. The letter said that he wanted to raise me, that I was a beautiful girl and I deserved a good father. It sounded sweet on the surface. Typed out, of course, so no way to trace it, really. I'm convinced after reading the letter that this guy was going to kidnap me and probably a lot worse. I've been told to share this story online a dozen times and just never had the guts. I think that's probably because no matter how safe I feel, I get the feeling that I'm being watched. This happened back in 2013. I just graduated from high school and got my first job working retail at a local neighborhood Walmart. My manager was a guy named Billy. At the time I was hired, he originally had me running the self-checkouts, but I'll admit I wasn't exactly enjoying the idea of having to be on my feet all day, so I asked if I could work at the money center or the cigarette counter. Money center was only allowed for employees who had been there for 6 months or longer, but he did say there was an opening over for cigarettes and tobacco. For some reason, nobody seemed to want it, and of course, because I was the new fish, they didn't explain to me. It didn't take long before I figured it out, though. There was this underage kid that came in frequently and tried to buy some Marlboro Lights. And of course, I always asked for ID, and that scared him away. Well, at first he did. Then he started showing up later in the day when it was near the end of my shift, and he was becoming a lot more insistent about cigarettes. Finally, I got his name. He claimed that it was Matt. Honestly, I don't have a clue and still don't to this day. First, I tried to be firm but friendly. "Matt, I like you, but this stuff can ruin your health. Matt, I don't think you realize how addictive these things are." Sometimes he would just stop by and chat, and I got the impression that he was starting to flirt. That was when I decided to switch from being nice to laying down the law. "Matt, if I report you to the cops for coming in here and pestering me about smokes, you could get thrown in juvie." I remember warning him. I figured that would end the conversation when he hightailed it out of there. That evening on my way to my car, though, Matt approached me in the parking lot. Honestly, it felt like he had been waiting for me to clock out. I hurried to my car to leave, but he was right there behind me. I reached for my keys where I normally keep a small can of mace, but he moved faster, grabbing my purse and running off across the lot and jumping over a nearby fence. Of course, I reported the whole thing to the police, and they got permission to check the cameras. Somehow, Matt seemed to be aware of where the cameras were positioned because none of the angles showed his face. The cops told me to call again if I got bothered again, and my managers said they would get security to walk me to my car each night. A week passed by without incident, then another. Honestly, I kind of forgot about Matt and figured that he just grabbed my spare cash to go get his fix somewhere else. A month or so later, I was on Facebook when I got a friend request from someone named Leon Carroll. No profile pic, no info besides just generic stuff that looked fake. And then a message. "You're really pretty." I ignored it, then I got 3 similar messages from other dummy accounts. Again, I ignored them all and reported it to Facebook. Been around the block enough times to not respond to those scams, and I didn't put 2 and 2 together until another message came in with a picture of my house. "Stop ignoring me," the message said. Something in my brain clicked that this had to be the kid from Walmart, so I called the cops then and there. Living in a small town, we don't have a cyber unit, so again I felt like I was wasting my breath. "Sounds like it's just an admirer to me," was what one officer even dared to tell me. When I got off of work that night, I found that my admirer had also decided to vandalize my car. "Stop ignoring me" was sketched out in bold letters on my front door that night. I felt like I just couldn't make a move without this weird kid knowing. Every day on my break, he would send a different anonymous message, usually something really perverted, and expect a response. It was unnerving, but I tried to act like it didn't bother me. Again, a week passed, and it seemed like he had given up. It was nearly the holidays by this time, so I decided to go to a nearby Sprint store and get a new phone and make new social media so that Matt would stop bothering me. The next 2 weeks felt like a godsend. I didn't have any more threats or weird texts from dummy accounts. I felt brave enough to even create a dating profile again. I matched with a guy named Richard who asked if I could meet up that night at a local outdoor restaurant. I was feeling confident and didn't see any reason not to. When I got there, I was dressed up, thinking I was going to meet a 20-something guy. Instead, when I got there, I saw who else but this kid sitting there. I think the creepiest thing was how well dressed he was, not the scruffy little guy I had encountered a few weeks back. Instead, he was dressed to impress, and when he saw me, his eyes sparkled and he ran to meet me. "I was starting to think you wouldn't show," he said. "Matt, what are you doing here?" I asked. He started rambling about how he had misjudged me, started apologizing about all the weird messages and explaining he was having a difficult time talking to girls. "I just want to be normal. Can't we just have that?" But my red flags were brighter than ever. This kid was not stable. He was trying to say all the right things to me, but I didn't want to spend more than even a minute there with him. Somehow I managed to convince him that I was going to freshen up in the bathroom, and when I got there, I dialed 911. They got there about 6 minutes later, and I remember hearing Matt screaming and trying to fight them when they told them that he had to come with them. Later on, I found out that he actually had brought a knife with him because one of the officers said that he had tried to pull it and they tased him. He was sent to juvie, just like I predicted. I later found out that he was staying at the local homeless shelter and apparently kept a whole binder full of photos that he had taken of me. Some of them had weird love notes attached as well. Honestly, I feel sorry for the kid. He started out awkward, and I thought maybe being friendly would have been the answer to make him get on the right course. But after that, I stopped working the cigarettes counter and got a new job at the hardware store across town. Sometimes I forget about him altogether, and then sometimes I still get anonymous messages, and it truly triggers me. When I was in college, I met this guy that became absolutely obsessed with me. Didn't matter that I was dating someone else. Didn't matter that I told him to leave me alone. It got so bad that I actually had to fail some of my classes and leave campus. He was getting his associate's degree in cosmetology, and we met after class one spring morning. I was friendly to him, introduced him to my boyfriend at the time, Craig, and we went our separate ways. I remember telling him I thought it was neat that he was going to become a hairstylist. Not many guys I knew got into the field. He was a little awkward and shy, clearly still didn't know how to talk to girls, but he thanked me and said he hoped to see me in class soon. That night he sent me a friend request on Facebook, and honestly I didn't see the harm in responding. His profile said that he was from the same neighborhood as me growing up, and I decided to be friendly and ask about his family. He responded almost right away, teasing that I had stalked his profile and said that he grew up almost a block from where my parents lived. "Yeah, it's crazy we never met before," I told him. He admitted that he didn't know me or remember ever seeing me, but he did say that he thought my name sounded familiar. Nothing about the conversation would have led me to think that he was going to go completely bonkers in less than 24 hours. I told him that I hoped to get to know him better in class and logged out. I always turn my phone off at night so I can get a good night's sleep. Even my folks know that. If it's an emergency, I can't help anyway, I always say. The next day, this dude has sent me at least 300 messages. Probably more. My phone blew up with all these notifications, and it took me a minute to figure out what was happening. I read them through as fast as I could, and honestly I don't remember much about it except that he went off the rails very quickly. First apologizing about not knowing me, then making up some experience where he thought maybe he did know me. Then he was rambling about his life, his problems, and how no one understood him. I was beginning to feel he was mentally unstable, if the plethora of messages wasn't already evidence enough. Late in the wave of texts, he was becoming angry that I wasn't responding. He was so mad that he started threatening me, my boyfriend, and even my parents. Rambling about how he knew that I was a pathetic excuse for a daughter, that I would never amount to anything, and that I should just give up and die. It freaked me out so bad, so I just deleted and blocked him immediately. I told Craig about it, and he told me not to get too worried. "I'll stay with you when you go from class to class. We have the same schedule, so if this weirdo does try something crazy, I'll be right there," he told me. That sounded good and all, but the next day, Craig had to go see about his car. He was never good at keeping his words, so when I went to class, this dude followed me the whole way. He kept his distance and didn't say anything, but I knew he was following me. He sat behind me in the seminars we attended too. I mentioned to the teacher, not wanting to cause any problems, just that I was freaked out. The teacher actually had the audacity to call him out right there in class in front of everyone and tell him to say that he would stop bothering. I felt humiliated and frustrated because I knew this guy was borderline sociopathic from the texts I had gotten, and immediately after class he confronted me, asking why I ratted him out. "Thought we were friends," he told me. I tried to make him leave me alone, told him that his messages scared me a little, and he just became more irritated. He even tried to follow me into the ladies' restroom. I remember he was cursing and getting angry, banging on the door and telling me he just wanted to talk. I got on my phone and called security. The college made a big fuss about it because when the officer did come, this dude lied his way out of stalking me, claiming that I had stolen something from him. He had pictures of this necklace that he said he had given to me as a gift, said that we were dating and I decided to break it off and flush the necklace down the toilet. I tried to tell college security that was all a lie, but this guy was really convincing, so they punished me instead. I had to miss 2 days of class due to a disciplinary suspension. That actually went on for a few months. Craig would always have something to do the days that this guy would follow me around campus, and he knew how to lie his way out of any situation. It was unnerving because no matter where I went, he was there too. He was smart enough to not ever bother me when anyone else was around, but when I was alone, he would always try to get close to me. One time he grabbed me and pinned me to a wall. I think he expected I was going to scream or something because he smiled and said he liked when I played hard to get. Only thanks to 2 girls walking by did he let me go. I usually would have to go hide in the bathroom until it was time for my next course, and even then he was just standing there waiting outside. Eventually it got really bad because he had convinced a lot of people at the campus that we were sleeping with each other. Like I said, this guy was cunning. He was a good student, never got in trouble, and he was very convincing. Even Craig almost believed that story because somehow the guy was photoshopping me into pictures with him on Instagram. It was almost the end of semester by this point, and I had enough, so I found an excuse to use some sick time and stay at home until time for finals. But this guy actually came to my dorm and tried to get in. And this was the last straw for me because even after I managed to prove to officers that he was the culprit, he managed to smooth talk his way out of trouble again. Craig was the one who suggested I should drop out and finish fall classes, so that's what I did. I changed my number and moved back in with my parents. I think sometimes after that night, this guy would try to sneak over and see if my window was open because I caught a figure on the streets a few times late at night. But eventually, after my dad bought a home security system, he stopped. It still rattles me to this day to think that I was this close to getting really hurt. This quarantine made me question a lot of life decisions I made. Back in February when this all started, I was working 2 jobs, living with my best friend Lexi and enjoying the high life. Then we got thrown into lockdown, and I swear, Lexi changed immediately. She was so serious about all the virus restrictions that even when I was in the house, I had to wear a mask. I'm not even trying to downplay this by any means, but she was taking it to religious extremes here. Anyway, after one particular argument about washing my clothes 3 times, one for normal wash, one on heavy, and once a third time just to be safe, I had enough and told her I was going to move out. That was dumb move number 1. I was already out of work, waiting and hoping for unemployment, and really didn't have a place to go. My parents are elderly and live 2 states away, so I wasn't going to risk that. Then I got the brilliant idea to post an ad that I needed a room to rent on Craigslist. Yes, that still exists and is still just as sleazy. Lexi forced me to move out that same day, though, calling me all sorts of bad names as she tossed my stuff on her front lawn. I didn't even get a chance to argue. So yeah, desperate times called for desperate measures, and I put an ad on Facebook too with a revealing picture of myself. Call me what you will, but it worked. This older gentleman responded to the ad and contacted me via email. The short message provided me with a small allowance for my gas and instructions on how to get into his apartment when I got there. I didn't ask any questions, although looking back on it, I really should have. You know that saying about too good to be true? Anyway, I grabbed a bite to eat and made it there around 5:30 on foot to save a taxi fee. Place looked nice enough, and I followed his instructions to get buzzed in. He lived on the 6th floor and explained that because of some medical condition he couldn't meet me in the lobby. Again, stupid me, I didn't ask questions. As he told me in the email, there was a key waiting for me under his doormat. Inside the place looked nice, well put together. Nothing that made me paranoid or feel the need to run. Then I saw this guy standing in the kitchen wearing, I kid you not, a kabuki mask. At first I laughed because of how bizarre it was. He said his name was Hano and he wanted to keep the mask on because of the quarantine and provided me with one as well with a dragon design on it. He even claimed it was far safer than those other N95 masks, and hey, I was getting a place to sleep, so I figured why not. Next few minutes were him rambling about different things in the apartment, and he showed me to the room. This is where things got a little creepy. I saw that he had some mannequins on display that were wearing traditional Japanese kimono dresses with other kabuki, and they were all lined perfectly on the side of the bed. He insisted I pick one out and get changed. Again, his reasoning was my clothing had the virus on it. Once he excused himself, I sat down on the bed and tried to convince myself that this was normal. So, he was a little eccentric. It's not like he was trying to do something worse than that, right? I went over to one of the mannequins. I think it was wearing a scarlet kimono, and took off the clothing, figuring that I needed to suck it up and appreciate the kindness of strangers. Then the mask it was wearing accidentally fell off, and I noticed that there was a hand-painted face on the other side. It looked very realistic. Once I got finished changing, I went back to the main room where he was now cooking up a fresh meal, and he complimented me on how well the dress fit. I thanked him and casually mentioned the hand painting. "Would you like me to do one for you?" he asked. "But you only saw me when I first came in," I pointed out, gesturing to the mask I was wearing. "It's all right. I've already memorized you," he said. I told him no, and we ate in awkward silence as my eyes glanced around the room. I think the first thing that really made me concerned was when I realized I didn't see an open window in the place, and that the door had a deadbolt on it. "Do you get a lot of break-ins?" I asked him. And again, in a deadpan voice, he said, "More often than not, it's the other way around." Then a few seconds later, he laughed, and I laughed back nervously. He told me that he was going to bed and thanked me for staying with him, but I really didn't feel like I wanted to now. "Hey, I forgot to go grab my phone charger in the car. Where's the spare key?" I remember asking. I was just going for an excuse to get out of there, honestly. This dude had an answer for everything, and this time used my own words against me. "Crime is bad, and it's getting late. You can borrow one of mine and go in the morning." Now, I may not be smart, but I knew that staying probably would mean something bad. I got a sixth sense about it, you know? "I have an iPhone. I think you've got Samsung," I said, hoping that my feeling was wrong and that he wasn't being overly creepy. Again, a dead stare and serious voice. "You're not leaving," He said something in Japanese a second after that and clapped his hands. I don't know why I've never noticed that he had some of those sensor lights, and it got dark in the room a second later. My instinct was to scream, but he placed something over my mouth and I felt immediately faint. But somehow I managed to not black out, and I elbowed him right in the gut. Everything happened so fast after that. I turned around and grabbed what I think was his head and demanded that he tell me where the key was. I felt something smash against my side. I think I kicked him and managed to hit the wall where the light switch was. I flipped it back on and saw that he had fallen over the couch and one of his ornate antiques had smashed. To my thanks, it was also where the spare key was hiding. I grabbed it up and ran to the door as I heard him cuss something in his native tongue again, but I never looked back. When I got downstairs, I told the lobby I needed an Uber stat. I didn't care about money, I just wanted to leave. I saw the elevator moving downward as I raced out the door, and maybe it was my mind playing tricks on me, but I heard Hano ask the receptionist where I went. When I got far enough away from his apartment, I texted Lexi and begged her to let me back with her. I promised I would never complain about all her quarantine rules again. I told Lexi the whole thing when she did a little digging, and the icing on top of this creep cake is that the guy apparently had been doing this for some time. Apparently he would target young women that were either trying to get out of a bad relationship or family situation and promise free rent, but then turned out to be a total creep, watching them night and day when they stayed with him. 2 of the women Lexi said had gone completely missing. It made me think of those weird mannequins, and I wondered if maybe the paintings he did were tributes to victims of his sick mind. I didn't want to think about how he had likely researched about me in the same way, and how easily I could have wound up on that missing persons list. So this happened when I was in high school and still trying to figure out my orientation. I wasn't straight, I wasn't gay, but it was also the early 90s, and I was smart enough to know not to mention anything beyond the norm to my classmates. Most of them accepted that I was just not into dating, but this one chick would not take no for an answer. Let's call her Becky. Becky was on the cheer squad, extremely popular and very bubbly. At least that's how she made sure she appeared to anyone who saw her. I saw the other side of Becky, her darker side where she would taunt me in the cafeteria, calling me belittling names and shame me in any chance she got. Being the queen bee, Becky never got in trouble for what she did. It even got so bad that I told the school counselor, but that didn't help any. You just need to man up, they said. Then they gave me a cheesy brochure about learning how to be a better Christian or some nonsense like that. I threw it in the trash the second I left his office. But that little incident didn't make me furious enough to fight back the next time she tried to pull a prank. It was lunch, and she and her friends were making sounds and pretending I was a pig, so I went over and spilled my food all over their table. It felt pretty good doing that, to be honest. And later, after 6th period, Becky confronted me in the hallway. "That was pretty gutsy back there, Steve," she said. I thought she was going to pull another prank or maybe even try to start a fight since I had nowhere to run. Instead, to my surprise, she leaned in and kissed me right on the lips. I remember being confused and shocked. Then she started chatting about how she found it hot, that I played hard to get, and wanted to know if maybe I wanted to go on a date. That was a complete 180 behavior from before, so I was suspicious. Besides which, I really wasn't interested. I cautiously told her I would think about it, and she gave me her phone number, but I still felt it had to be a prank. She refused to leave until I gave her my home phone number too, though, and including my online screen name. And that evening back home, I started getting messages. She was sending messages that were provocative, and it made me uncomfortable. I told her to stop, and she even sent a picture. My brother's in the room with me, and surprised when he saw that and even started whistling. "Wait until Mom sees this. She's gonna hear about it," he teased. "It's not like that. This girl is taunting me. You know, I'm not into girls like that." "Well, send her my way. She's hot," he said. I remember rolling my eyes and shooting messages back to Becky, thinking it would possibly end this whole charade if she found out that I told my family. To my surprise, she agreed to start chatting with my brother. Things kinda escalated quickly after that. Becky became my brother's girlfriend in less than a week and was over to our house 2 or 3 times during the week for study sessions. My parents weren't the brightest bunch, but insisted that I chaperone them. Often that still led to them making out with each other, and every time they did, I got this really creepy sensation that Becky was putting on a show, like she was just pretending to like my brother to make me jealous. Sometimes I saw her look at me as she would grind on him. I would tell them to stop, and they would both giggle and tell me I didn't like it, I could just leave the room. I warned them I would tell Mom and Dad, which of course infuriated my brother, and he shoved me out after that. I held true to that, though, and ratted them out. Becky could only come over once a week after that. At school, she kept up the acting. She was interested in me, though, sending me dirty messages over instant messenger telling me to not show anyone, especially not my brother. She also warned me if I did say something, she was going to tell the whole school that I was coming out as trans. No, this was the Deep South, by the way, and at that time, coming out like that would be a death sentence. And I felt trapped. I couldn't tell my brother, my parents, and the school wouldn't listen, and Becky just kept making things worse. This went on for about 2 months. She would try to make out with me every day at school, and I would manage to get away or hide in the restroom till next period. And then when she came to see my brother, she would flaunt herself at me. I tried to tell my brother that she was obviously obsessed with me, but he said I was imagining things. Things came to a head at around Halloween. There was a dance that the whole school was attending, and my parents were also going to be out of town. I got sick before the dance and stayed home, and my brother went to go pick Becky up while I laid down. Now, the next part I can only say happened per what my brother told me, but apparently Becky started acting weird at the dance and said that she felt sick. Then she slipped away to the restroom. Well, he got impatient and went to find her and discovered that she had left the school entirely. He told me he drove back home, not thinking much of it. Maybe she was really sick. Then when he got home, he saw that our front door was wide open. He woke me up after that and told me that we had a break-in. We called her mother and father, and they told us to check their home security system. I remember my brother was pacing the room as he was on the telephone with her mom and dad, and his face went white as a sheet. "What is it?" I asked. "It was Becky," he explained. I didn't understand at first why she would break in, but he explained that according to Mom and Dad, she had brought a camera and came up to my room where I was sleeping and just took pictures of me, like for about 20 minutes until my brother got home. After that, my brother broke up with her, and my parents refused to let either one of us have anyone over to the house for like 6 months, and we filed a restraining order against Becky and even used the security footage as evidence. She left me alone, thankfully, but she sometimes would smile and wink every blue moon. To this day, I have no idea what she did with those pictures, and the cops said unless she posted them somewhere or potentially did something worse, she really didn't break any sort of privacy laws. A year later, she moved away, but I still think about all the grief she gave me and wonder why she was so obsessed. I don't think I really want to know the answer, though. My family decided to take a road trip in the summer. Restrictions were lightening up in our state, and we really were sick and tired of being cooped up. So my wife suggested we surprise her folks upstate and drive to see them. We were about an hour into our trip when we ran into some highway construction outside of Galveston and had to take a detour. Traffic was bad, I was angry, the kids were whiny, and I remember pushing my foot down on the pedal and flooring it to go around a couple of cars at one merge to get going. "Daniel," my wife chastised me about it right after it happened. Split-second impulse temper, I guess. Anyways, as we went down the highway, I pointed out that a black Ford pickup truck had decided to cut by and was coming up behind us. "Oh, so if they jump off a bridge, you would too?" she questioned me. I rolled my eyes and just focused on the road while she decided to take a short nap. I guess it was 20 miles later I noticed that the pickup was still behind us, and I thought that was a little strange. There had been enough gaps in highway merges that at least a little distance should have been made, but no, this driver had somehow managed to maintain closeness to us. I kept my eye on them for another 40, some sense of danger softly ringing in the back of my head, I guess. But then I had to pull over and get gas, so I figured that they would just drive on, and they did, and I chalked it up to me being just a little paranoid. As I got out to fill up, I asked my wife and kids if they wanted a snack and went in to grab something. When I came back, I think I felt like I was doing one of those classic double takes from the movies. This black truck was right behind us at the pumps, and not only that, a gentleman had hopped out of his cab and was apparently chatting with my wife. I walked over the snacks and smiled cordially at them, trying to figure out if I was just seeing things, but it was definitely the same truck. "Howdy. Name's Mitch. I was just getting friendly with the missus here. Said y'all are headed towards Galveston?" He asked with a strong southern twang. "Yeah. Family road trip. You?" "Oh, just about the same." "Nice. I figured that was the case since you've been behind us a while." I was hoping to catch him off guard, but the man just gave a short laugh. "Didn't mean to, but I guess that's what happens. We've been on each other's tails since you decided to cut everyone off at that last interstate turnoff, huh?" "That sounds like an accusation," I blurted out. My wife later chided me for antagonizing the man, and maybe I shouldn't have, but he was definitely giving off some very strange vibes, and this was before things got crazy. He didn't take the bait when I said that. Instead, just tipped his hat and waltzed back to his truck, and I got an earful from Brittany. "I mean, he scared me at first, but I think he's just a little lonely," she offered. "Right. Well, he can go make friends somewhere else," I said as we drove down the highway again. I felt like I couldn't get away from the truck fast enough. About another hour passed by, and my wife was checking her social media when I noticed she got this frown on her face. "Something up?" I asked. I had all but forgotten about the strange encounter. It's just kind of weird. Remember that driver we met a while back? He just sent me a friend request on Facebook." Well, delete it," I said bluntly. She chastised me again, but I was serious. Something didn't feel right. I checked to see if he was following us, and Brittany got on to me for being a worrywart. "He's not a serial killer," she teased. But she listened to me and blocked him on Facebook. We were halfway to our destination and decided to stop and get a bite to eat when he showed up again. It was this Waffle House right off the interstate. Honestly, I hadn't seen him about 40 miles, so I was surprised that he had caught up. He just came in, ordered his food, and sat down. Brittany said something about it, and I told her to ignore it. I kept getting this feeling that he was watching us as we ate. Finally, she had gotten tired of my paranoia and walked over to this guy's booth. "My husband wants to know if you're following us," she said. The guy just laughed so loud I think the whole diner heard him. He rattled off some flimsy excuse I didn't buy and then asked if she got his friend request. I was furious and got up and grabbed her hand. "Look, I don't know what your problem is," I said. Then this guy stood up and looked me dead in the eye like he was going to fight me then and there. One of the waitresses told us to take it outside, but I chose to leave before things got serious. When we got on the road again, Brittany realized that she had lost her phone at the diner. "Let me use yours so I can Google where it's at," she told me. Using that Find My iPhone feature, she soon saw that it wasn't at the diner. It was moving down the highway towards us. I knew it had to be the other driver who found it and took it. "Oh my God, is this guy seriously stalking us?" I asked. My wife panicked and tried to call the phone, but it went straight to voicemail. Then she started checking her social media. "Daniel, this is scaring me," she said as she showed me that he had taken multiple pictures of our car as he had followed us for the last several hours. "Call the cops," I told her as I tried to check my mirror and see where he was. About 5 cars behind us. "Okay, there's a rest stop ahead. Tell them that we'll meet them there," I said as she got on the phone with someone. They're saying it could be another 45 minutes since we're so far out, she said frantically as I pulled over. Right on cue, the other driver did too. Right. Stay in the car then, I said when he pulled up behind us. Honestly, I was prepared to defend my family then and there, but this guy took it to another level. He pulls out a sawed-off shotgun from his passenger side and aimed it toward me, blasting straight at my tires. I fell to the ground and shouted for my wife to do the same. He did so again on the driver's side and drove off. When the cops came, I did my best to offer a description of him and his vehicle, and they gave us phone numbers for a tow to the next town. We made it there a little after dinner, and honestly, I was so shaken and rattled by the encounter I just wanted to go home. We even added the additional social media profile, hoping that it could help them find the person. And a few days later, they told us that they had found the vehicle. It had been abandoned somewhere, and apparently it was registered as stolen. So we had no clue who this guy was. Worst part about this whole story is that it's not really over. Every so often, my wife will see pictures of our car on social media, and know for a fact it's gotta be the same guy. All those posts on my Facebook feed about New Year's resolutions have had me thinking about an experience I had a few years back that I still have a hard time dealing with emotionally. Anytime I think about it, I actually feel like my stomach gets in knots and I need to vomit. It was that bad. This isn't actually my first experience with a stalker, but it's the one that comes fresh to my mind this time of year. It was February and I had just gotten my tax refund, so my best friend convinced me to join her local Legends gym. I told myself this was the year I was going to make a change and get healthy. I think everyone says that. Anyway, what I really liked about this gym was that they would give all members a passcode and you could come at weird hours to work out. Since I usually have to work a split shift as a CNA, having the chance to swing by the gym super early when I clocked out was a blessing. Usually I'll get off around 2 in the morning, so of course there weren't very many people using the equipment. It was like a literal ghost town. A little creepy though, especially since they had obnoxious 80s music constantly on repeat throughout the entire building. I settled into routine with that gym, first a short shower and then heading over to the ladies-only section. That was another thing I thought was nice about the place. Fellas, don't get me wrong, but I am a bit self-conscious and I prefer to do my workouts in private. In that separate part of the building, I was usually the only one there. It was even quieter back there because the music was muffled, and I'll admit that there were a few times that I thought it was a bit eerie. Sometimes you hear something and at that time of the morning it gives you the jitters, you know? Somehow I convinced myself to stick to the routine even when my bestie dropped off the wagon in March. I was determined, and honestly the membership fee was one of those locked-in contracts, so you know what a hassle it is to get out of that. And despite the emptiness of the gym, I convinced myself that it was okay. Since no one was there, I couldn't possibly be bothered, right? Well, a few weeks passed, and I was getting on one of the exercise bikes when I noticed something strange attached to the monitor. I paused in my workout and took it off, trying to figure out what it was supposed to be. It was smaller than my finger. Then I noticed a reflective surface, and I realized that it was some kind of camera. I stopped working out immediately and went home, a little freaked out. I told my bestie about it the next day, asking if she had ever seen anything like that while she was at the gym. "Oh yeah, girl, they do that all the time. It's in the contract you sign," she said nonchalantly. I tried again to explain to her why it bothered me. She has never really understood my experience previously with stalkers, but that is another story. If some guy's giving me that much attention, I would jump on him then and there. "If it really bothers you, though," she said, "just talk to Mike, the general manager, and I'm sure he can calm you down." I did that the next day, leaving for work early so I could meet this Mike guy beforehand. He was a lanky man in his mid-20s and seemed nice enough, and when I told him about the camera, he did actually show genuine concern. "Huh, that is weird. And you found it over where?" I guided him over to the bike and showed him where it was attached. It's definitely not one of ours," he told me. He promised that he would look into it and figure out if someone was tampering with the machines, but just the confirmation that it was apparently a hidden camera made me feel extremely on edge. I stopped going to that gym after that, and my mind constantly was conjuring up crazy scenarios about maybe one of my exes having found out that I worked there. I've managed to break away from 2 obsessive ex-boyfriends before, and it literally made me panic to think that one of them might be back in my life. I was trying to get my life right, and I didn't need this drama at all. I think a day or 2 passed and Mike contacted me. "Hey, I think we figured out who was messing with the equipment, but there's a problem," he said. And that didn't sound good. I remember my heart dropped when I asked why. "Well, on camera I can see them coming into the gym when another member enters. They go work out casually for a few hours until the building is kind of empty, and then I spotted them slip the camera on the machine and leave. But when they leave and enter, they don't scan a membership card. I'm pretty sure whoever this is, they actually aren't supposed to be here." That made me even more freaked out. I asked if I could come by the next day to check the cameras and see if I recognized the person. I was completely convinced that it had to be one of my exes. When I got there the next day, I even insisted that my bestie come with me. I felt that paranoid going into that gym again. We watched the security tape together with Mike, and I kept waiting for him to identify who the guy was. But much to my surprise, he told me it was a girl. Some tall, blonde, fit chick that came in odd hours, always waiting until a member entered or left. I didn't recognize her at all. I checked the times. It's probably just a coincidence that they chose that machine. They weren't targeting you. Anyways, we put up a warning to anyone else. We don't want any pervs in this facility, obviously. Mike told me. I did feel a sense of relief after that, and Mike did post a grainy picture of the perpetrator near the front desk, so I actually convinced myself to start working out again. It didn't take but 2 days before I saw this blonde at the gym, though, and I swear seeing her in the flesh made my blood run cold. Like Mike said that she waited until someone came into the building and slipped in. Then she would go work out in the ladies' room. When I was there, it was just me and her, and I got this really weird feeling that she was just watching me. I mean, was it her? And was I the one being targeted by her? It was just really confusing. I thought maybe I should confront her, figuring out if it was her and what she wanted, but she left before I mustered up enough courage. When I left, though, I found out that someone had taken my clothes from my locker, and I panicked again. I knew it had to be the mystery stalker. I canceled my gym membership after that. Despite the fees, I told myself it wasn't worth dealing with this crazy woman or any legal process that I would have had to gone through with him. My friend rejoined a few months later, and get this, the blonde girl apparently had even gotten a job there. My bestie always said that the blonde would ask about me if I was coming back to the gym. Dear God, I don't plan to. I bought a stationary bike and started working out at home. I think she quit a little after that when she realized that I wasn't coming back, and it was so hard to pin it on her. I still wonder what she was doing, why she was constantly filming me, and whether I should still be on edge. Hey friends, thanks for listening. Click that notification bell to be alerted of all future narrations. And if you got a story, be sure to submit them to my subreddit, r/letsreadofficial, and give and receive feedback from the community, and maybe even hear your story featured on the next video. And join a live stream to catch an invite to my Discord. And if you want to support me even more, grab early access to all future narrations for just $1 a month on Patreon, and maybe even pick up some Let's Read merch on Spreadshirt. And check out the Let's Read podcast, where you can hear all these stories in long compilation form and save huge on data. Located anywhere you listen to podcasts. Links in the bio. Thanks so much, friends. And fart on my face.